From M&T Bank Stadium, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Sunday in October. Take two if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or for the first time ever, Instagram. We are live on Bolt Banner Sports on our Instagram account, trying something new. Jonas, we are going to recap the Ravens' 30-16 win over the Chicago Bears to save the season. They now improve to 2-5, an absolutely crucial win. We're going to break it down from every angle and talk about, well, if this season is salvageable. All that and much, much more. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, we're going to recap this 30-16 win by the Baltimore Ravens over the Chicago Bears. But first, I have to read out a review because we always read out our 5-star reviews. If you're listening to us anywhere on your favorite podcast platforms, write us one and I'll read it out here. Hugh C3 listened to our episode last week with Childs Walker. He said, I've enjoyed the podcast for weeks now, but you finally earned the 5-star review by having my childhood friend, Childs Walker, on the show. Keep up the good work. He just wrote it because he is friends with Childs.
We should get Childs
His
on more often.
childhood friend? Yeah, we should get Childs on more often, just so Hugh C3 can enjoy his good old friend. All right, Jonas, before we get into the game, though, we should talk about the weirdness entering this game because there were questions about whether Lamar Jackson would return to action this week. He was at practice on Wednesday, at practice Thursday, and at practice Friday. He was listed as a full participant in Friday's practice and listed as a questionable for Sunday's game. Then on Saturday, Ian Rappaport reports that Jackson ran with the scout team during Friday's practice. The Ravens then downgrade Lamar Jackson from questionable to out, and they released this statement. Upon further evaluation today and after conferring with the league office, because Lamar didn't take starter reps in practice, we updated our report to reflect his practice participation. Now, the NFL rule states that participation on the scout team, no matter how extensive, by a player whose normal repetitions would be with the starters but for his medical condition, would not alter the player's proper designation as limited participation. John Harbaugh addressed this after the game when asked about it, Jonas. What did John Harbaugh have to say about the weirdness of how this all went down?
Yeah, he was kind of wishy-washy on the whole thing. Said that it was more so he basically laid the blame at the feet of, quote, the training room and PR and the other side, not really a football coaching matter, which is fair because he's not the one who's putting together the injury report. He said, it's an honest mistake. It really is an honest mistake. I can tell you this, nobody is trying to hide anything. There's no advantage to be gained with that, which I think is something that most people would probably disagree with. The fact that the starting quarterback on an NFL team is questionable versus not questionable, is practicing with the scout team, is not practicing with the scout team is a big to-do because it moves betting lines, and the NFL is very firmly in bed with pretty much all the big draft, all the big, gambling companies. So it matters. That's why there's an injury report policy enshrined with the NFL. That's why there's so much attention paid to who's practicing, who's not practicing, who's questionable, who's doubtful, all that good stuff, because so much of this fuels the economic engine that pours the billions of dollars into the NFL. And obviously John Harbaugh, as someone who's coaching this game and not gambling on this game, let's hope, knock on wood, is not going to make as big a deal as the people who were covering this and pointing out all the different aspects of this. The fact that this happened so soon in the wake of the NFL's own gambling scandal, where you have a lot of kind of evil forces at play who are threatening to sully the integrity of the game. And obviously the matter of Lamar practicing, not practicing, whether he was a scout team, whether he wasn't with the scout team, is not as bad as some of the accusations leveled in the NBA. Nowhere any close. But this stuff matters for the NFL, for the fan base, for the Ravens, for Lamar. It's about expectation management for a whole lot of different concerns. And the Ravens didn't do a good job with it. And that's why they had to, offer a mea culpa on Saturday in a way that you don't really see teams do too often or at all, frankly.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for a player to be listed as questionable on Friday and then have their status downgraded to out on Saturday. That happens. What we hadn't seen before was a player's participation level in a practice retroactively downgraded from a full participant to a limited participant. And if it's a matter of somebody not knowing the rule of that, if a starter is on the scout team, that he needs to be listed as a limited participant, that's a problem. But it's a problem either way, quite frankly. It also stirs up memories of 2021, 2022, when John Harbaugh was optimistic, was hopeful that Lamar Jackson would come back sooner rather than later, and then he ends up missing the rest of the season. You covered those seasons, Jonas. How much deja vu are you getting?
Yeah, it definitely smacked of the frustrations with covering Lamar and asking John and getting nowhere with, with what was actually happening behind the scenes, because both those years, John was pretty optimistic pretty soon after Lamar got hurt, first with the ankle, then with the knee. He was optimistic because, according to him, Lamar was also optimistic about coming back. And, this year you have John telling us right after that Rams game, which was 2 weeks after Lamar first hurt his hammy, that one of the building blocks coming out of the bye week was going to be the fact that the Ravens had their quarterback back. And obviously John backpedaled a little bit once we got back from the bye, and he declined to specify exactly Lamar's timetable or how optimistic he was about Lamar coming back. And then we get to Friday and he's full participation. And usually in years past, when Lamar has gotten hurt and worked his way back, that's typically been the progression. You see him either miss a game or miss a day of practice, come back limited, come back full. That typically bodes well for a player coming back from injury and being able to suit up on game day. But there was just so much weirdness last week with Lamar being limited, but clearly not getting reps with the ones. And you wondered, is this just the Ravens playing games with the media to try to create a smokescreen about who exactly was going to play? I think the Bears, like any self-respecting team would, said that they were preparing to face Lamar Jackson, because the worst thing that happens if you don't prepare to face Lamar Jackson is someone else of lesser ability comes in there and gives you less trouble. But John Harbaugh told us after the game today that they are, quote, that he is at least hopeful that Lamar is going to be out there on Thursday as a starter. Obviously, the fact that even though Friday walkthroughs are not really anything to write home about in terms of prognosticating and forecasting the availability, it's a good enough sign that I think he should be ready to go on Thursday. But if you would have been asking me to bet money about when Lamar was going to come back during some of these seasons where he's come back from more serious injuries, I would have lost you a lot of money. So I guess just check back on not even Tuesday, check back on Wednesday, because Tuesday usually is the more advanced walkthrough kind of thing. All the practice participations are estimates from the PR staff. So I don't think we'll get a better sense for what Lamar is going to do or not do until Tuesday afternoon, maybe Tuesday early evening.
We have gone long enough talking about a player who didn't play in this game. Let's talk about some of the players who did play in this game, specifically Tyler Snoop Huntley, who was phenomenal in this game. The Ravens obviously make the change at QB2. Cooper Rush had started the previous two games, and in the fourth quarter against the Rams gets benched for Snoop Huntley. And Jonas, I said after that game that the Ravens would get the same. I said my take was the Ravens would get the same level of play, roughly, just in a different style. Tyler Huntley, Cooper Rush could not be a more different style. I was very wrong. The Ravens got a much, much better version of their offense today with Tyler Huntley under center. And it goes back to the kind of quarterback that Lamar Jackson is and the kind of quarterback that Tyler Huntley is, both very athletic, not afraid to use their legs. You plug and play Tyler Huntley into this offense, and he does things in this offense that he can't on other teams. And he does things in this offense that Cooper Rush can't. Tyler Huntley today was outstanding. Completed 17 passes, finished with over 200 total yards, over 50 rushing yards, had a passing touchdown as well. He was phenomenal, and he was the thing that kept this Ravens season afloat.
Yeah, 0.26 EPA per play. That's basically Pro Bowl level if you were to stretch that out over an entire season. The only real blemish on the day was just the red zone, and for the Ravens to still put up 30 points with that, not having Lamar, I think it flexed really well on Tyler Huntley and just this coaching staff in general. I mean, I think we'll talk about the defense and give them their flowers, but I think Todd Monken for as under fire as he's been with reporting from us, reporting from the Sun about players having misgivings, coaches having misgivings about the predictability of what this offense was, about certain guys not being in at spots where you would expect them. And I think you could argue that still happened today. A couple third and shorts and fourth and shorts where Derrick Henry is conspicuous in his absence. But the Ravens did a good job of keeping this offense on schedule. I mean, a success rate 50% is really, really good. Rushing 46%, passing 56%. Tyler Huntley did enough to stretch to pump the ball downfield where Chicago's defense, I think, had to respect him. I think he probably takes some issues with some third down plays where he's, passing short of the sticks and not really giving a whole lot of hope for those guys to be able to move the chains. But he did a good job. He took off when he had to, other than the one sack I think he took on that first drive. Did a good job of staying out of trouble in that pocket.
Yeah, sacked twice in this game.
Yeah, and I just think that this was the Tyler Huntley that the Ravens needed. If the Ravens had gotten this, or if the Ravens could have gotten this Tyler Huntley over the weeks where Cooper Rush had started, then that is probably a different discussion for what this team could have been. The Week 6 game against the Rams definitely would have been winnable had the Ravens gotten this type of performance. But we should say that, this is not a great Bears defense. It was a Bears defense that was living off turnovers. And it was a Bears defense that came in today without their top three cornerbacks. And I think you saw that when they tried to blitz and hold up in man coverage because they just did not trust that pass rush, especially after they lost their, Shamar Turner, I think pretty early on in this game, their second round pick. It was pretty hard for them to keep the Ravens behind the chains. So good job of the Ravens, but I don't think they're going to see for the rest of the season a secondary that was as compromised as this Bears secondary was.
Yeah, they certainly were the beneficiaries of that wounded Bears secondary, but getting everybody involved can't be bad for the state of this offense. I mean, there were guys that were involved today that had not been involved at all. I mean, Rashad Bateman had more receiving yards on that one completion than he did in the previous 3 games combined. This offense just needed a performance like this. And it does make you go back and wonder, like you said, Jonas, if Tyler Huntley had started that Rams game, if anything would be different. And then I also look at the fact that Keaton Mitchell in this game had some very nice moments. 4 carries for 43 yards, obviously showing the kind of burst that he had his rookie year when, he burst onto the scene as an undrafted rookie before he suffered his devastating injury. And you wonder if Keaton Mitchell had been involved in this offense earlier in the season, if anything would have changed. I'm not saying that any of those games might have gone differently, but it certainly does make you scratch your head. John Harbaugh improves to 15-3, by the way, after the bye. I do think that this team very much benefited from the bye in a lot of ways, not just in terms of, figuring out, self-diagnosing exactly what was going on, but also getting healthy. Saw Roquan Smith come back into this game. His return to the field was huge. Ronnie Stanley looked better, although he did leave at one point. Looked like agonizing pain at one point in the second half. Leaves for the rest of that possession and then comes back in. Held up very well on the left side as he's been dealing with that ankle injury all season long. So this is a team right now where you feel so much better, just so much better after this. And especially on the defensive side, too. You feel so much better about that performance combined with the performance against the Rams, stacking good games as they head into what needs to be a season-saving stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Bears running game that came in today on fire. I think close to 350, 400 yards total over these last two games. Ran really well against the Commanders, ran even better against the Saints. They were going up against a Ravens run defense that didn't have Tavius Robinson, Amdi Madubuike. There was uncertainty about how Trenton Simpson would be able to fit in there, especially on third down. And, the pass rush didn't do a whole lot. It got enough, I think, from Kyle Hamilton and from the secondary behind them that they were able to keep this Browns defense, this Browns offense off schedule. I mean, 6 for 13 on third down, not great for the Ravens, but I think it was pretty good until that fourth quarter where the Bears were able to move the ball a little bit better. If this Ravens defense can get enough from its front where you are holding teams to 3 or 4 yards per carry, then so much of this playbook is available to Zach Orr. And, it needs to be, because otherwise you're not going to be getting home with Mike Green and Kyle Van Noy and Travis Jones. It's just, still so many clean pockets for Caleb Williams. The 2 3rd and 6s on that touchdown drive where has enough time to find guys open for a 25-yard gain, then a 27-yard gain. Oh, I guess one of those was a screen pass, but still, you just worry about how sound this defense is. When you look at just how easily the Bears were able to move that ball on that first drive, it was just one chunk play after another. And to the Ravens' credit, maybe you are right that this is a little bit of a misleading game because it's rarely that this defense is going to come in feeling as refreshed as it was with the bye week that it had. But the Ravens did what they had to. Again, to hold this Bears offense to 6 points, I think it was a season low for the Bears offense in any game this year. Probably wouldn't have expected that considering the state of this Ravens defense. But they had big time players make big time plays, from Nate Wiggins to Kyle Hamilton, to, Travis Jones stepping up inside as a run defender. Just good job all around. Good job by Zach Orr putting this defense in position to make plays. Obviously, it was not a faultless or a blameless game, but they did a really, really good job. Yeah,
Kyle Hamilton talking after this game, talked about the mood of the team. And this is something that we heard from others, is that he said, it's not like we just won the Super Bowl. They understand that they have quite a long road ahead of them if they want to try to get back into this season. But he shouted out Nate Wiggins, who now has the only 2 interceptions on the season for the Ravens. Nate Wiggins said after the game he doesn't feel like there's any receiver that can match up with him, showing that kind of confidence that you need to be a cornerback one. And certainly, as you said last week, he's taken a step forward. He looks much more like the Nate Wiggins that we saw in the second half of last year, somebody who was really starting to figure out life in the NFL.
Yeah, and that he didn't let that bad first couple of drives stick with him. That's the mentality that you need from a cornerback, just to have the memory of a goldfish to be able to move past those first couple of reps where Rome Odunze was really taken to him. Just a guy who would be kind of built in a lab to take advantage of Nate Wiggins' weaknesses. He's big, he's strong, he's a good route runner, and you saw it in that first quarter. And for Nate to be in a position where later in the game he's right spot, right time to make a huge interception.
Yeah, I mean the Ravens did things in this game that they hadn't done in a long time. This was a version of the team that we have not seen. This is the version of the team that we thought that we were going to see in a lot of ways. Creating turnovers, something that they talked about a lot. They have the interception from Nate Wiggins. They almost probably should have had a forced fumble and fumble recovery from Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah.
Marlon, who has been punching at footballs all offseason and all season long, finally is able to wrestle one free, and cruel irony, it's taken back.
Also forced a fumble by Jake Hummel on. Was it Jake Hummel who forced the fumble on the kickoff that the Ravens almost returned?
Yes, I think so. Jake Hummel with a nice stop by the goal line as well.
4th down stop, which doesn't count as a turnover, but it is effectively a takeaway.
Kyle Hamilton, doesn't count as a sack, but forces an intentional grounding from Caleb Williams by getting into the backfield.
There's a second intentional grounding that the Ravens forced.
Yeah. Mike Green getting his first career sack. on a critical red zone possession. I mean, there were so many instances in this game that the Ravens did things that they had not done previously. I thought on offense, one big thing for them was converting on 3rd and 4th and short. They convert their only 4th down attempt in this game. They converted on 3rd and short numerous times. And a lot of it was Derrick Henry up the middle. It was simple stuff that they just needed to move the chains on that for whatever reason, they have not been able to do this season. And it's been a source of much consternation for this offense. It's what we spent a lot of our time during the bye week wondering why it's not possible and asking those involved why it's not possible. We didn't see any tush pushes today. That was a positive. But we just saw them be able to move the chains and get the push up front offensively that they needed to. In this game, Derrick Henry finishes with 21 carries for 71 yards, so another healthy carry load for Derrick Henry. Tyler Huntley carried it himself 8 times for 53 yards, and then 4 carries for 43 for Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell's offensive impact did come at the expense of Justice Hill, who had just 1 carry in this game for 2 yards, and I don't believe, he wasn't targeted at all in the offensive on that side of the ball. But John Harbaugh said after the game, they thought about during the bye, how can we get Keaton involved in the offense? And that's what a lot of fans have been calling for all season long, is get this guy who is incredibly speedy. You can't come up with any plays, any way to use him on offense. And I know that they had Rasheen Ali as their running back 3 for a while because they wanted to use him in so many other special teams formations that they weren't able to use Keaton Mitchell on. But then Keaton Mitchell also takes a kick-off return close to midfield in this game. He is a dynamic athlete that it's been the story of the Ravens season so far, is how do you have all of these talented weapons, all of these great offensive pieces, and you can't get them to go off individually? And if it happens at the expense of Justice Hill in that game, that's fine. Justice Hill will eventually get his at some point later in the season. So they finally were able to find something that worked on offense.
And left unsaid in all this is the fact that the Ravens did not make any changes to that offensive line, which I think we thought was kind of a fait accompli going into the bye.
Yeah. There were a lot of changes they could have made. They could have made changes to the coaching staff, to the personnel. They didn't.
No. Falele is still starting, or he's still starting. Notable that he gave a pretty, I forget if there was I think it was a sack, where he just gets walked back into Tyler Huntley, and Tyler Huntley is just compressed in that pocket and has nowhere to go. Just the familiar kind of struggles that we've seen from Andrew, where he's just given up his chest way too easily and just getting unable to anchor and just getting blown back. So it's not always positive with the offensive line, but just a step forward. And obviously they're going to have to kind of rally and turn around pretty quickly, because we saw a not great Miami Dolphins team really take it to a pretty explosive Atlanta Falcons team that obviously didn't have Michael Penix, didn't have Drake London, but still they were able to put the clamps on that pretty explosive Falcons running game. And I think the Ravens will probably be pretty solid favorites going into that, assuming that Lamar is expected to play, assuming that there's no big injuries that we kind of overlooked coming out of this one. But it seemed like the Ravens were able to have a pretty healthy roster based on who we saw in the locker room and just the fact that there weren't a whole lot of guys who were banged up during the game. But you just can't lose any momentum from this game. And listen, like the Steelers are going to kick off in about an hour and a half. If the Ravens win the next one, if the Steelers drop their game against Green Bay, if they lose to the Colts, who look like one of the best teams in the NFL right now, I think
I can't believe we're having this conversation.
I'm just saying, like, play around with. You have enough time on your hands to play with the New York Times playoff calculator. The Ravens, even though they would be still one game back in the AFC North, would be on paper by the algorithm in the New York Times the favorite to win the AFC North, which is just crazy, because we were talking about, had the Ravens lost this one, sell the farm, hit the reset button, do whatever you got to do. But the margins between the Ravens and the rest of the teams in the AFC North are not as big as perhaps was once feared.
Yeah, it definitely would have been curtains. I mean, I think walking into the stadium today, I was thinking about, if the Ravens lost this game, we might have to be sitting here doing, that's a wrap on the Ravens season, because you just can't be 1-6 and expect to go on some kind of run in the second half. Now, 2-5, it's not exactly ideal, but there is now a path to this. And if you are able to turn things around quickly and Lamar Jackson is back under center on Thursday night and you get to 3-5, then we start having some serious conversations about it. They just needed this game in every way, not just the final result, but they needed a performance like this where they were able to thoroughly outplay their opponent. I think
and they got, they did it not with the big names, but with the guys whose names are never in boldface. It's Jordan Stout dropping just a laser guided punt inside the 5-yard line when the Ravens could have gone for it. I thought maybe should have gone for it on 4th and 5 there in the fourth quarter. That precedes, of course, the Nate Wiggins interception with the Bears backed up and, trusting Caleb Williams to have a bit of a brain fart. Lo and behold, he does. It's Keaton Mitchell stepping forward and, the Ravens finally getting a little bit more of an east-west running game to supplement their north-south stuff. It's Charlie Kohler getting overlooked like Charlie Kohler does on that 10-yard touchdown pass from Tyler Huntley in the fourth quarter to really separate themselves from the Bears finally. When I think probably a lot of people in that stadium thought that, here comes the collapse again.
Yeah, the PTSD factor was settling in the fourth quarter. I was thinking about a scenario in which the Bears come back and win this game because it was a 16-6 game entering the fourth quarter.
Yep.
The Bears had the ball. They come down the field and they score a touchdown. And so it's a 3-point game. And eventually the Ravens are able to put the hammer down, and it's the interception by Nate Wiggins that sets up the Charlie Kohler touchdown that puts this game away. But I thought about the Ravens are going to play so well in this game for 3.5 quarters, and then they're going to blow it in the end, and we're going to just reset the conversation to week 1 in Buffalo. It just would have been a reset to that conversation of why can't the Ravens hold on to these leads at critical times? But they did it. They pulled it out.
Yeah, we got a lot of guttural sounds for Loop. We got a lot of guttural sounds for Snoop, but we did not get the just pure, uncut, unfiltered booze that a Ravens collapse that I think a part of me expected would have rained down upon them today. And, that's the mark of a good team. It's the mark of a coaching staff that I think made good use of the bye to come in here with a plan to put these guys in a position to succeed. I got to tell you, I did not think that the defense would hold up the way it did after those first 10 or so plays unfurled the way that they did. But, Todd Monken, I think probably quieted a lot of haters out there. Zach Orr definitely gave himself a little bit more leeway there with all the people who are calling for his job. And then obviously Chris Horton, John Harbaugh with their kind of brain trust on special teams, just getting enough from Tyler Loop, who if you moved both of those field goals back another 5 yards, maybe today he is not in fact 2 for 2 or whatever he was. Yeah. Or, excuse me, 3 for 3.
Yeah. He made more than that.
I think if both of those kicks had been moved back even 4 or 5 yards, he might have been a different story today, but football is a game of inches, and the Ravens in all 3 of those cases got just enough accuracy.
Yeah, and I think another thing that they did well that we hadn't seen before was bow up in the red zone on defense.
Yep.
Kyle Hamilton said after the game, we've been a bend and break defense in the past, and today we were a bend but don't break defense. I mean, that first quarter could not have gone more poorly. Ravens have 1 possession, they go 3 and out. The Bears have 2 possessions that essentially take up the entire quarter, and they go into the red zone on both of them, and they end up with field goals on both of them. Those were key possessions that you could be sitting there in the second quarter saying it's 14-0, and there's no way the Ravens are going to be able to throw their way back into the game with Tyler Huntley. The defense was great, and you mentioned the unsung heroes that played a part in this, but Roquan Smith deserves his flowers too. Playing against his old team, first game back after the injury. Mike Green talked after the game about how important Roquan Smith is to this defense, and we know it. I mean, we for all of the criticism that has been thrown Roquan Smith's way over the last year, I'd say, about whether he is the old Roquan Smith that was in Baltimore in the first couple of years under Mike Macdonald. I thought he was great today in run defense, in coverage. He seemed to be playing with a fire. You posted the clip before the game about how fired up he was. This is the Roquan Smith that they need. And it's now that they've unlocked him and they've got him back, and they've unlocked the old Kyle Hamilton that they had by bringing in Alohi Gilman and using Kyle Hamilton as that close to the line of scrimmage chess piece. He blitzed a ton today. It didn't always work. There were a couple times where Caleb Williams was able to exploit that by going directly to the spot that Kyle Hamilton vacated. But if it does work just enough that you're able to get some good pressure on the quarterback, then it's worth it.
Yeah, just the the spine in this Ravens defense needs to be stronger.
Yeah.
Just point blank.
And they need their star players to perform like they did today.
Right. We saw Kyle Hamilton get there. We saw Roquan Smith get there. Marlon Humphrey had, an okay game. Not his best, but I think probably the best news with him is just that he wasn't hurt and that concussion protocol was cleared pretty easily. Not a whole lot of impact plays from Travis Jones, but I don't think that we would necessarily call him a star player. Obviously, Nate Wiggins coming through with the pick after the shaky start. Just, there's so much talent on this Ravens defense, even compared to this Bears team that had been coming in with much more with much more accomplishments, much more plaudits, many more plaudits, and the Ravens holding this team to 16 points after what they did to the Bears, and after what they did to the Commanders, after what they did to the Saints. This is a team that had won 4 straight, and it was probably a byproduct of them beating up on a soft schedule. A lot of sisters of the poor that they were kind of taking advantage of, but I think the Ravens have to be really, really happy with holding this team to 16 points, because I think for this Ravens team, they're probably not going to be holding a lot of teams to fewer than 20 points, if we're being honest. Obviously there's not a lot of heavyweights, I think, on this Ravens team until we get to the later parts of the schedule where maybe you're going up against
on the Ravens schedule.
Yeah, maybe you're going up against a high-flying Packers team.
The Jets got their first win of the season today.
Right. We
don't
don't
count
know
out the Jets.
We don't know if Joe Burrow is going to be back for either of those, Bengals games. We don't know what the Steelers team is going to look like, but the Ravens, I think, have to be confident that if they hold teams under 20 points with Lamar, with the firepower that you have, then that will be enough to give yourself like an 80% chance of winning. And the Ravens are at a point in the schedule where they have to, that they can't leave any of these games up for grabs, because if you're going to be playing 50-50 games the rest of the way, then you're going to lose enough games where you're going to be out of this by the end of the season.
Exactly. One more thing that they did today that they hadn't done pretty much all season: control the time of possession. They end up 30 seconds on the right side of the time of possession in this one, but they controlled the ball for way longer than they had in previous games. And part of it is luck. Part of it is they get backed up on that one drive a couple times, a couple penalties, and they're able to convert when they need to. And, part of it, you could say, well, maybe you control the time of possession because you don't have the same home run potential that you would when you have Lamar Jackson in there. Fine. But the net positive is good. If you control the time of possession, you keep your defense fresher, you keep them off the field, you're able to wear out the opposing defense. And it's something that I think points have to come first. They're the top priority for any offense, but secondarily is time of possession. And I think that's a large part of the reason the Ravens were able to put the pedal to the metal in the fourth quarter and win this game.
Right. And I think if you taken out just the first quarter time of possession, it would have been overwhelmingly Ravens, because you mentioned it, just how shaky the Ravens looked in that first quarter. It was a 24 plays for the Bears in that first quarter, 3 for the Ravens. And I think we all thought that, oh boy, what have the Ravens gotten themselves into? But then you look at just how they were able to find themselves on offense. 12-play drive, 8-play drive, 10-play drive. Even their shortest drive of the game is a 2-play possession that they score on, because that is the play that Nate Wiggins sets up with that interception. So 9-play drive after that, 1-play drive after that, that is the end of game where they just kind of basically it's effectively a kneel down to get out, but it's a tush push at the end to give themselves some breathing room.
And it worked.
And it worked. Not with it wasn't Mark Andrews back there.
I think it was Huntley that just took the snap.
But they did what they had to. They gave themselves some breathing room. I personally, if we're talking big picture, did not expect a Ravens win. You didn't expect a Ravens win.
No.
Probably a lot of people who were betting on the Ravens and were very, very pissed that Lamar Jackson was not back there were probably not expecting a Ravens win when they got the news that actually they would be Tyler Huntley back there. But this is the kind of deodorant type win that you need just to change the vibes, if not change the personnel. Like, there's still not a dynamite pass rusher. There's still not a great interior presence there along the offensive line, aside from Tyler Linderbaum. But we know that with Lamar back there and the just collective defensive wisdom on this staff, that there should be enough good plays in that playbook to be able to make the kind of game changing plays that I think the Ravens did, at least in that first half. So I think that they definitely set themselves up for the kind of stretch, for the kind of stretch run, for the kind of second half of the season turnaround that they need to save the season. Whether they're actually going to do it, we'll see. But in terms of injuries, in terms of vibes, in terms of offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, special teams efficiency, I think you pretty much checked every single box that you needed to today.
Yeah. All right. We are going to turn the page on this one and look ahead to a matchup in Miami on a short week on the other side of another quick break.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, let's look ahead to this game against the suddenly hot Miami Dolphins. Obviously, another must-win. Everything from here on out is pretty much a must-win. But the idea of getting Lamar Jackson back for this game obviously dramatically changes the look ahead and dramatically changes the prognosis for the Ravens season as well. On thebanner.com, you are writing something. What are you going to write, Jonas?
Just looking at what the Ravens coaching staff proved to their players, proved to the fan base, proved to the NFL at large about, a lot of attention being paid to the kind of heat that Zach Orr was under, the whispers about Todd Monken that, of course, we had reported on, along with Baltimore Sun. So for the Ravens to deliver a game plan with as much time as they had to put something effective on paper, I think, showed a lot of people that this is a team where the coaching staff could be a plus and not just a neutral or perhaps even a negative. So good job by John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, Zach Orr, Chris Horton, everyone in that building to deliver something that quieting the doubts, quieting the hate, at least for now, in a week where they absolutely needed it.
Yeah. Gianna is writing about the defense and how they stepped up in a massive way in this game, made Caleb Williams' life, for the most part, uncomfortable. As you said, Jonas, there were more times where they could have gotten more pressure on him, but they stepped up when they needed to, especially in the red zone. Childs Walker will have his 5 things as well. We'll have a podcast for you at some point this week, maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, as we try to figure out who's going to play and who's not going to play when, and we try to preview this Miami Dolphins team in a short week. But looking forward to being back on the airwaves with you, Jonas.
Yeah, and obviously we've already talked about just how important every game is, but if you come out of this game Thursday with a win, then you've effectively got a mini bye to prepare for that next game against the Vikings. Obviously, that's another disappointing team, 2 disappointing teams that could be meeting up in Minneapolis. But the more time that you can get to prepare for the weird, exotic stuff that Brian Flores is bringing to the table, the more time that you have to prepare for on defense, to give yourself what are the kind of stuff that we can throw out there that'll make J.J. McCarthy look uncomfortable. You might say that you don't need a whole lot to make J.J. McCarthy look uncomfortable, but I think, or Carson Wentz or whoever it is back there at quarterback. But this is a big game just in terms of the springboard and what you can do to make yourself even more effective in that game, because it goes the Ravens won today. They go to Miami.
Yep.
At Minnesota, at Cleveland. Who knows what that game is going to be? Who knows what that Cleveland team is going to be offensively, defensively?
Should be a win.
Should be a win.
Should be a win. Yeah.
But you take that, another springboard into the game against the Jets, who won today, but the Ravens, I think, would probably be at least touchdown favorites against that team. You take care of business, maybe that's 5-5.
Yeah, and
you got a stew going.
You got a stew going. Is Arrested Development? Is that Carl Weathers?
Yep.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Rest in peace, Carl Weathers. No, yeah, and what essentially, I mean, is it possible to make the playoffs at 11-6? Absolutely, but the Ravens would have had to win out, and this just buys them a little bit more time, because how game. How many seasons have we said the Ravens somehow in the second half of the season just lose a stupid game that they shouldn't? Every team does at some point. So, maybe it is the Jets game, maybe it is the Steelers game, whatever it is that they lose. You can live with it if you have 6 losses potentially and still make the playoffs, but you got to win as many as humanly possible.
Right. And we've talked so much about how the not downfall, but the flaw of much more talented, much more accomplished Ravens teams have been the games that the Ravens should have won, could have won, but ultimately did not win. And that has been the difference between perhaps a 1 seed in the playoffs and still a division title, but not what you wanted to get. That's the Browns game last year. That's been, I can't even think of, just so many dumb games that the Ravens have dropped, and the Ravens cannot drop this year because, you look at the rest of the schedule, don't want to be guilty of looking too far ahead, but there are not a lot of games where you can say confidently that the Ravens will not be favored in that game.
Yeah.
Will they be as dramatically favored as they were last year, in some of these games? No, because this defense is still wonky. We still have questions about the offensive line. We don't even know if Lamar is coming back on Thursday. But the Ravens, based on the confidence in them in Vegas, based on the just collective goodwill that John Harbaugh, I think, has earned over the years, means that it won't be long if they take care of business even as soon as Thursday, that there's going to be a lot of talk about the Ravens are now the favorite in the AFC North.
Crazy.
Whether that is going to be ultimately proven true, who knows?
What 1 or 2 games can do for you. We're not sitting here with our heads held low and trying to recap the Ravens season and look ahead to top 10 draft talk. And the important thing too is trade deadline is November 4th. It is the first Tuesday of November. So that is obviously a deadline. They have to show Eric DeCosta in the front office that they are a team that is worth investing in, and maybe sending out draft picks in order to bolster.
Right.
All right. That just about does it for the Banner Ravens podcast. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Tune into all of our coverage on thebanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. Gianna Hahn, Childs Walker, Kyle Goon, writing some great stories there as well. We'll have another episode for you at some point this week, so stay tuned for that. For Jonas Shaffer,